welcome to the next episode of the Teralon Talks podcast. Today's a fun day. We've got Dan and Charlie both in from Ritzy Animation here in London, and they're here to talk about just the overall animation industry within the overarching production industry within London and the UK. So yeah, I'm going to pass that off to you guys. Just give a quick introduction.
Okay, thanks, Perry. Yeah, I'm Dan, and I'm one of the directors at Ritzy Animation. And yeah, we've been going for about 5 years now, something like that.
Yeah, thanks for having us on the show. Yeah, I'm Charlie, and also set up with Dan like 5 years ago. I guess our story started like at an old company when we sort of worked together for a while. And we had a sort of burning ambition really to sort of set up our own thing, and eventually sort of took the lead.
It was my idea, by the way.
It was Dan's idea.
It was my idea, yeah.
After Vegas.
Yeah.
So yeah, like that's me. But
Nice, sounds good. So you guys met, you just said in Vegas, like Las Vegas.
No. I went on a stag do to Vegas. And I think by that point I was just getting a little bit bored, because I guess you can only work your way so high at a company, and I was kind of directing. Charlie was also, like lead lighting and running like big teams. And to be honest, between us, we were doing quite a lot of projects because of our skills. They covered quite a lot of bases in animation. So I think we were just starting to feel a bit like we're doing all the work and we're just handing over the USB to the boss. So we thought, well, if we had a couple of computers and we had a few clients, we might be all right. So I don't know why you mentioned Vegas, but basically I came back from Vegas and I was like, shall we just do it? And
cool.
That's kind of how it began.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta start somewhere. So you both have been in animation your whole careers, is that correct?
Yeah, Charlie longer than me, but that's where we met at a company called Blue Zoo. I was there 7 years, and I think you were there like 10.
Yeah, but I've been at other places as well before. Like I think we both studied. Well, I studied animation and Dan did too. So like we made the decisions to sort of work in animation like from the age of like 17 really.
Okay.
And did the courses, like 3 years degree, and then just sort of I had a couple of jobs before Blue Zoo, and then I was there at Blue Zoo for like 3 years before Dan started. That was his first job out of uni, I think. So we met there, sort of became a bit of a partnership and a team, as he said. Like he sort of rose up through the ranks really quickly with an eye for direction and a generalist sort of abilities. Like in animation, there's all sorts of different skills. Like you can be an animator, the person that makes it move, or you can be the sculptor, the person that like makes it look like a human or whatever it is. But yeah, as Dan said, between us, we could cover the sort of whole production really, apart from one or two steps. So yeah, we became a sort of partnership there, and then it felt natural to sort of try our own thing when the timing was right. And
but we didn't have anywhere to start, so we had to use my sister's bedroom.
Okay.
That was our studio.
A bit of like Apple starting in the garage story.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit. It was a tiny room, 2 computers. Obviously, my mum and dad were there 24/7, so there'd be client calls with my dad in the background, shouting out about my football boots and stuff like that. So yeah, it was proper cowboys at the beginning, pretty ropey.
We tried to present a sort of image of this boutique London studio, whereas the reality was that we were just in his sister's room. We put a sign on the wall and put 2 desks in there, and it felt legit.
Yeah, if you just saw the one wall, it looked pretty good.
It's all about the angles.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I think we had a London phone number as well, so we did all the things to try and make it seem like we were in,
it was
the mix.
It was quite interesting actually. Like in that spare room, we grew well. I don't know. We got lots of favors early doors, and like one job that didn't come in the end, but one we pitched for was with Facebook, and like they didn't know how big we were or anything like that, and we had to sort of pitch to them via Zoom. This is like pre-pandemic and everything, because for some reason we couldn't get to Facebook, so we were really careful to sort of angle the laptop.
Well, I think they wanted to come to ours, and it was like definitely not. No, like the studio is under construction at the moment. So we managed to swindle a deal to do it over Zoom and share screen and stuff.
Yeah, just made sure we positioned the camera to look at the logo on the wall and not like the sort of wardrobe behind in a different angle.
We didn't win the job, by the way.
Close though.
But yeah. Anyway, that's kind of how it began.
Okay, so you've been around, what, 5 years now?
Yeah.
Just, I guess, what type of animation studio are you guys? What kind of work do you guys do? Yeah, if you could just give us just a little bit of background on the type of projects you guys take on and you guys' process there.
Yeah, this is something we were trying to figure out for quite a long time, is like what makes us different, because every animation studio does animation, you know, and we were asked a lot, like, what is your niche, like what makes you different? And I think it took us a while to figure out, but like ultimately we love animating characters, so that could be a big monster, it could be a human, but it could also be like the Pixar lamp, you know, it could be, you can give personality and humor and character to any object, if you know what I mean. So I think that's what we love doing the most is character animation, but that can be 2D, 3D. We haven't really done a stop motion project yet, but motion graphics, what else?
It's all sorts, but basically like we work, we do things for kids TV. We've made like some kids TV series. That's one side of our company, but then we've also sort of done commercials and like things for web,
music videos,
apps,
short films, online spots. Yeah, there's tons of different projects, but they're all different. They're all pretty enjoyable, but most of them do have a character in, I would say. It's quite rare that we just do like well, we had to start by doing logo and text animations back in the day, but now we are keen to attract more character pieces.
Cool. So 5 years in, how big are you guys now?
We were just saying before we started, it's kind of like an elastic band. It just goes like that, you know. Depending on the project that comes in, we get big, we recruit, get loads of freelancers, and then as the project goes on, sadly people leave, and then by the end everyone's gone. But then when you multiply that by like 3 or 4 projects, we're kind of, what's happened I think is we've gone from like 2 people to 3 to 4, 5, but then amongst that we've had periods of loads of people. I think at the moment we're on like 25, because we're just coming towards the end of our second kids TV series, Obki. But now we're ramping up for another project, so it's really hard to put a final number on it. But core staff is like 6 or 7 probably.
Okay.
We should know that, shouldn't we?
We should know, yeah.
So you guys rely on a core staff, but based on the project, you guys have a heavy freelancer community you guys reach out to.
Yeah, and we get those people back as well, so they sort of feel like they're part of our family, if you know what I mean. Even if they go away for a couple of months, they come back, they're with us for another 6, you know, so.
It's one of the hardest things, it's just like saying goodbye, like when you want to keep people, but at our position at the moment, we can't afford to sort of just keep people indefinitely, even if they're super talented. We're sort of having to like predict now, like what work we're going to get in, and then we're sort of putting our money where our mouth is in some people and just sort of keeping them on long-term and permanent contracts. But there's plenty others that we'd love to sort of keep, but we just can't justify at the moment.
But we did go back down to just 2 in the pandemic. Went back to me and Charlie for ages. And then about 2 months later, we were at our peak at like 40 because of the first series of Obki. So yeah, it's crazy how quickly things can change, you know.
Would you say the pandemic as a whole had a opportunistic effect on the animation industry coming out of it?
Well, I really don't know the answer to that, because like at the start of the pandemic, obviously there was no film and TV. So like the phone was ringing off the hook with all sorts of people wanting a substitute for film. And so animation is a natural sort of port of call for that. But so we spent like the first couple of months of the pandemic basically pitching on really big jobs, but none of them happened really.
No.
And then, one job that did happen was one that was just from nowhere, you know, like a real vague inquiry, which I just took, you know, thinking nothing of it. And then that turned out to be a sort of really big project for us. And so it's really hard to know whether the pandemic is...
I think it was. when you told people the price of animation. Like, it usually the conversations used to go really well, and then it was like, and how much is this going to be for like 30 seconds? And then you'd quote, and it was like, oh, we'll let you know then, you know, because I guess it is just more time consuming and more expensive than a quick live action advert, you know. I don't know, that's how it felt, you know. It was just those were the points the conversation sort of died out a bit.
Yeah, so let's dissect that a little bit, actually.
Yeah.
We don't have to go into any specific pricing or anything, but yeah, as you said, I think every creative kind of faces that dilemma at some point of, you know, you have to quote for the amount of work and the amount of effort and manpower that it takes to put some of these productions together. And, you know, for a film crew, that's all sorts of different things, but for animation, it's quite specific.
Yeah.
You guys, if you just talk a little bit about animation, I mean, in general, animation it's an expensive niche to be in. And that's not a bad thing because you get what you pay for. But animation is a lot more than just like sketching stuff on paper and, you know, going through a flip book or like drawing stuff on a computer and pressing animate. It doesn't work that way. And I think a lot of people do think that, right? So I guess just from a client or a customer standpoint, or anyone who's like interested in animation, what is that process like? How much work does go into an animation? And I guess that would just help explain on why the prices are the way they are.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, what you've explained is exactly what we have to kind of battle with. And I think it depends whether it's 2D or 3D. So like you said, if it's 2D hand-drawn stuff, which we actually don't do much of, I'd say we're like 80-90% 3D at Ritzy, but you can't just click a button and create a 3D image. So it has to go through a whole pipeline of, let's say, for example, they wanted an animation of a little fluffy monster running around a room or something. Before you even get anywhere near making it move, you'd have to design the monster on paper first or on Photoshop digitally. Then you'd get the client to sign off what they think of that 2D drawing. They might want to change the colors, they might want to change the size of the eyes, they might want to change the proportions. But then when they're happy with how the drawing looks, then it goes into 3D production. So that monster would then be sculpted, like Charlie mentioned earlier, almost like digital clay. And again, you would ask them what they think of it from all angles. Then it goes through a process called UVing, where you essentially map out that 3D character kind of like flat so that you can paint it. And then you put it back together again later and paint it in 3D. And then again, ask the client if they're happy with the textures, you know, the colors, all that stuff. And then you could do I mean, the list is endless before you get to the point where you actually make it move. Because then you'll need to put bones in it, like a puppet, so that the animators have actual controls to move.
And then you got to make it move.
Then you got to make it move. And then once you've made it move, which again has many different stages as well, you have to light it, a bit like you would in real life, but in the 3D package. Then you have to render it, which costs money, and you get a massive frame sequence, which you then import into a compositing software like After Effects or Nuke. Then you have to grade it, light it, treat it, add effects, and then you export it. So it's a really, really long process from initial idea on paper to final movie. Did I miss anything?
I don't think so, no. It's just like, design.
It's a lot of steps.
And then storyboard.
Storyboard, animatics.
So like you're planning the narrative in 2D first before you've even begun. But these stages are all there so that the client gets the control that they need and like everyone understands what they're doing. But every stage takes time, you know, like to design a character could take anything from 2 days to sort of 8 days. And then
some projects weeks.
And then could be longer. And then, you know, modeling can take that long, and then texturing can take that long, and then rigging can take that long. Rigging is adding the bones and the puppet and stuff, and then animation is like what, two seconds a day or something like that.
But I think it's just like you can't just switch the camera on. That's the difference.
So can you break down in a camera, right? So anyone who has any like technical knowledge of cameras, I guess in a camera you're recording in frame rates, right? So you're recording standard in the UK is 25 frames, 50 frames if you want slow motion. And that's how many individual frames are in every second of footage
Mm.
versus animation. You have to do that all from scratch. So every single frame has to be created. And I know you guys' actual like playback frame rates are slightly different. But every frame within every second of every animation has to be created. Not, I mean, and it's essentially from scratch. But yeah, tackling all of those pieces beforehand before you can even get to making every single one of those frames.
Yeah.
And that's where the massive amount of legwork comes in. So people think like, oh, 30 seconds animation, like that's not that long. But in reality, like it's 300 times, I don't know, 12, 15 frames.
Well, we've just worked on like
what project you're doing.
Yeah, we just worked on one like of our biggest projects yet. I can say it now; it's been released, isn't it? But it was like for Gareth Bale, the footballer. We did an animation, like a 3D version of him. It's for a big golf campaign called Golf is Good, to encourage people to get out there and play golf. But anyway, that was a 60-second animation, or the hero film was.
This was 30, wasn't it?
Yeah, his was 30. But to get to that point was like 6 months' work. It's just like it does blow people's mind when I say it. So like for 60 seconds, it's like started like at Christmas.
Yeah,
it's just when you see the amount of work involved, it's like there's a reason for it, you know.
I don't know whether to be proud or like.
I know sometimes you do click play and you're like,
well, when you come to the end of a Pixar film, you see about 8,000 credits.
Yeah, it's exactly right. Yeah, there's so many departments. And yeah, you think of the size of them, and their films are 2 hours, and they take like 4 years with 400, 500 people, whatever. So 30 of us, it's going to take 6 months to do a minute. You know?
But equally, like, you know, we've done a series in 9 months, which is about half an hour of content. But it's just like, it's just the build of all of these things that takes quite a long time. And once it's there, it's quicker. But it's just, that process of making a character or whatever it is labor intensive and time consuming to get right and do well. So, but the animation side, once everything is built, it's quite quick, really. It's quite efficient. But that's why reuse is really important as well. Like once you've got Gareth Bale, the second advert's a lot cheaper. Because
that's true. Like now we have him in 3D. He's got all his bones
essentially
in
him. All of your assets are there.
Exactly, yeah. So next time it is just like, well, let's bring him in and start making him move, you know.
Right.
So you only have to do the end steps. But yeah, does that sort of explain it?
No, that explains a lot. The one thing I found interesting out of all the steps was obviously you have to put bones, quote unquote bones, into your animations once you have those renderings done. How do you decide like how a character moves, like their types of movements, and like not necessarily where you put bones, I guess, but I guess where do you go in that creative process? Like, does that come from the client, or does that come from you guys, or like is it a style that you guys just have overall that kind of your guys' animations, kind of your characters move in this certain way? I think something that really sets apart animations from company to company is just like the fluidity and how different characters move, and they're usually quite apparent in how different they are.
I think it depends entirely on the brief, because like we've had projects where it's like really, really wacky, and like you might sort of have limbs that like are double as long and bend strange, and like that those characters have a really different personality to, say, Gareth Bale, that's a bit more sort of strong footballer, golfer, like, you know, more realistic animation, I would say. So like we try to inject as much personality as possible, I think, and that's like where Dan's speciality really. So I've probably like jumped the gun before you, but
it's right. I mean, most of the time a character either has 2 legs or 4 legs. It's either an animal or a human or a monster, and that's the like 10% where they have like 1 million different legs or something, but we don't animate many of them. So there's only 2 different kind of bone structures really that can go into them. A quadruped, which is the 4, or a biped, which is 2 legs. And there's kind of a standard kind of bone setup. But then once that's in there, it's down to the animators to make it move in an appealing way, you know. So you could do a wave that's like that, you do a wave that's like that, you know. So that's when we get these show reels through from animators that apply. We're looking for like appealing movement and like character and personality, and like
Good timing,
good pacing, good weight. The 12 principles of animation, basically, which you might not be aware of, but it's like a book everyone studied at uni.
Can you name them?
Oh, don't.
Sorry.
Squash and stretch. There's a ton, but yeah, that's in answer to your question. Like, you can make something move so many different ways,
and it depends on the end goal of the brief, really. Yeah,
because a client might say like, that's way too bouncy and cartoony and silly. You know, want it to be like really serious and moody and slow, and it's like, shit, we messed that one up. You know? But that's why it's important to have the stages. You know?
Right.
I think like a lot of it is almost dictated to by the design, though. Like, you know, if you look at just a character that you've made, you'd almost visualize how that might move, and like, it might look quite quirky, in which case you'd have a lot of like bendy limbs and things like that. It's a bit more slapstick, whereas something looks quite serious, you know, you'd probably animate it a bit more naturally, more realistic, I would say. But yeah, it does just depend on the brief and the animator as well. Different animators bring their personalities into it as well. That's also a key thing. Like
the series we're doing at the moment, I can look at each episode and I know who's animated it in the office, which is quite interesting because it's the same character, but like I can just see that looks
subtle
like
differences.
Yeah, I think I know who animated that because of the size of the eyes or what they've done with the mouth or the way he turns and their timing. It's just like, yeah, that's definitely Vitus's shot, or that's definitely Mark's or Ali's or something. Yeah, so it is interesting.
That's really interesting. So yeah, to piggyback off of that, what do you guys look for, I guess, in an animator? You work with a lot of freelance artists, and sounds like, I guess also to go off that, is there quite a lot of freelance work for animators within I guess the industry as a whole, but in London as well?
Yeah, we're really lucky now, like, because we have got to a point where we're getting quite a lot of applications like daily and stuff. It's really hard to look through them all, but we really want to. But you can tell quite quickly when you click play on their showreel, how good they are, if you know what I mean, or how experienced they are. Because I think a general rule of thumb is like, put your best shot first, because attention is limited, like on CVs, you know. So I'm going to click play, but I'm going to give you like 10 seconds to impress me before maximum. I have to archive this email, unfortunately. So if their first shot's good, they're generally pretty good. I
think you look for, like, it's quite easy to spot bad animation, especially with characters and humans, for instance, because you need to add weight, and it needs to, like, there's quite a lot of like muscle dynamics and body dynamics going on there. And if they're just sort of, if it can look very
you'd
odd,
know,
very
Perry,
quickly.
trust me.
Yeah.
If I showed you, you'd be like, oh, that looks strange. You know.
maybe
you just would, like, bones move everywhere. It's just it's all rigid and jerky and not smooth. And
But in answer to your other question, there's so much work at the moment because, you know, with all of these streaming platforms, Netflix, Amazon, BBC, Sky, like, there's actually been a bit of a talent shortage this year because of all of the work that's going on. Like, you know, all these big budget sort of like Lord of the Rings, Lord of the Rings, the new Lord of the Rings one. Like, I don't think that's in the UK, but it's and then, you know, the Game of Thrones spin-off. They all require like really like talented, good animators to make dragons look good. And so, you know, for us, like, we're sort of trying to attract the talent away from some of these bigger studios. You know, like with like really long sort of production timings. You know, it'll take years to sort of make these sort of shows. So there's a lot of work out there. So animators, if they're good enough, then they'll get a job pretty easily.
I guess let's dive into a bit of how you get into animation in the first place. I don't know if there's like, I guess along a production side of things, there's a lot of different paths you can take. You know, we can either go to school to be a filmmaker. You don't have to. You can learn it yourselves these days. Getting in as a consumer at like beginner level is so much more accessible than it ever used to be.
Yeah.
So I guess on the animation side, is it more of a thing that people need to go to university and get a degree, or is it more of like, you know, people start when they're 12 years old and like to animate on their computer and can do all that as long as they have a show reel to show for it and they know what they're doing. Is that okay? Do you have any opinions on that?
I think basically show reel, as Dan said, is king. So it doesn't matter how you get that show reel. And, you know, there's softwares out there now that are free, ones like Blender, which is like a 3D package. So you can self-teach easily now. I think university courses are becoming a bit less relevant lately because it's so expensive for students to do it. And there are online courses as well, which they can do, which are a lot cheaper. But I don't want to rule those out because they are good. They are still really good for you. But I think in this modern world,
there's just so much like out there now online, like online courses, YouTube, Vimeo, I don't know what else. Like there's internships. Like I started by like making little flick books when I was younger, and I knew I liked making things move. So I think you've got to have like a passion from an early age. And then like at school, you'll probably like art, DT, design, making stuff, computers. You know, if you've got that kind of bag, then you're on the right track. And then it is just a decision if you want to go to uni and study animation, which is very expensive, but you're going to learn the right things. I don't know if I'd do it now. I would probably just sit in my bedroom and self-teach, like you said. Watch the pros and just have a go with the free software, and then you can start applying. Like Charlie said, like I'd rarely ever look at a CV of like where they've studied or their experience because I just want to see if their animation's any good. Right? I mean, what else actually is there apart from uni? What else would you learn?
Well, apprenticeships and internships.
But they're really hard to get.
They're hard to get, and often, from our point of view, you want someone that already has a base skill set as well. Like you're not completely training up from new. We're not at the size yet where we can do that and help. But there's other things like screen skills and things where people can get help from like mentors and
some of the biggest studios, like our old employer, they now offer like an animation course that you can sign up to. Where it's like you have these webinars and you watch someone animate like real time, which is great. You know, you can like comment and ask questions live while they're animating. I think I would just learn without paying.
Where possible.
Yeah, where possible.
I think that's the thing as well, because when I went to university, like essentially you're self-teaching whilst you're at university anyway. It's just like it just provides that network of people that have a similar interest.
The network and the structure, I guess.
And then some industry links as well from courses. But essentially, you do have to learn it yourself anyway. It's just like you're motivated by the fact you're trying to get a degree. Mm-hmm. And you're probably motivated as well by how much you're spending for that degree. And so ultimately, you have to teach yourself animation in whatever field that you want to be in. I
don't know if we've just put people off uni by saying all that.
I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think that's, I guess, an insight or something that a lot of people would be interested in knowing, because, you know, as say you're like 16 years old and you've got either a knack for it or natural interest in that kind of thing, and people are deciding like, do I go spend all this money on a university degree, or do I take the same amount of time to take 3 years and just, you know, do 8 hours of tutorials and stuff a day and probably come out farther ahead than you would have if you went to uni anyways. So
because animation's so broad, like we were saying, like there's design, there's modeling, there's texturing, there's look dev, like surfacing, there's animation, there's lighting, there's comping. University is really good because you get to experience all of these stages and like actually choose what you're good at and what area of animation you want to go in. I think that's quite hard to do on your own without knowing that you want to be an animator. You know, it's so broad. It's going to be really hard to sort of decide as a 16-year-old or something, I want to be a sculptor or whatever it is. So university I see as like a sort of a place where you learn the process, and then from there you basically specialize probably a bit later, because otherwise you have to like see it all to like decide which areas you like, I would say.
Can we break that down as far as you said there's seven different areas of animation, I think you just listed off.
I reckon there's
something
more.
like that.
There's more. There's more.
Yeah, I guess I guess I just assumed you would just become an animator.
I think that's why when you've been saying animator, Charlie's been saying like, well, Dan can answer that question because I'm an animator.
Which is making it move.
Which is just making it move. If
you've got a lot more different design processes that go into it.
Yeah.
So what are the, I guess, general different areas that you can work in within animation in general?
There's design, which is the 2D stuff. Then there's sculpting, which Dan said earlier, which is the digital clay side. And then there's texturing, which is adding like skin
painting
color,
the 3D models,
like t-shirt, cotton, whatever the materials are supposed to look like, metals, things like that. Then there's rigging, which is adding the internal skeleton so that the animators can make it move. Then there's animator, the person that makes it move. Then there's lighting, which is virtual lights, making all of the shadows fall in the right places and all of that stuff, which the animators don't see. No one sees until the end. And then there's compositing, which is bringing in all of the renders together and making it look as pretty as possible for the final image. So you can. But then
there's tons more in between all that. You know, there's storyboard artists, concept artists, map painters. These are doing the backgrounds. Production you could go into production coordinators, production managers. That's more the running of making the animation.
Usually people do like
pipeline, which is like
coding,
making sure it all runs seamlessly from department to department. File structure's all good. Directors, you know, there's just tons within animation. It's not just an animator.
I figure the bigger the project as well, the more specific your job gets.
Yeah, definitely. And the bigger the studio you go to, the more you'll be like one person on that specific team doing that specific job, which is what we quite like about Ritzy at the moment, is because we are young still. We're still quite small. People are coming in and they're getting to do a bit of everything, and they've been able to tap people on the shoulder and be like, oh, how's that looking? I did the paintings for that. Like, what's it looking like in 3D? And they're going, oh, you know, this is what I've been doing with your textures. And then they see the other guy on the other side of the room that's making it move, and they're like, oh, that was the character I drew a month ago. It's been built in 3D now. So they're all talking to each other and they're all working with each other, and they're getting to have a go at every stage, you know, which we really like. I suppose it's a generalist. It's called like a...
Usually people have like 2 or 3 areas in animation that they're better at. So someone might design and storyboard, and someone might animate and sculpt. Someone might light and code or something. And like for us at aged 5, we like people that are really good at flexible. One thing, but then good at 2 or 3 others, so that we can put them to different tasks more easily.
Keep them longer. Because if they're like, oh, my contract finishes on Friday, we can be like, well, let's have a look at what you can do. And if they can do like 3 or 4 different things, we might be able to use them on a different project for that department, you know, or that stage of the process. But
like you say, in the film studios and that, like, you'd be just an animator, or just a lighter, or just a rigger, or just a pipeline person, or whatever.
You get some really niche artists that like their skill is like 3D fur, or like hair, or flames, or whatever, or and they're just applying to do that one effect, you know, which is like 1 in a million chance that we've got that particular effect at that time that we need, you know. So yeah, it's really broad.
How do people get to that point of being that?
I don't know. I don't know, because I never at uni was like, do you know what? I love hair. That's all I want to do is hair. But they do seem to have a passion for it. I guess they must have like been asked, do you fancy having a go at doing this during a project? They've done it. They've really enjoyed it. They've learned loads about that specific effect, and they've got really good at it. So they're like, well, can you do the hair for this character and this hair? And then they become a hair specialist. You know, so I don't know.
I think you're right though. It's basically like you start with a slightly broad, like low skill set, and then over time you figure out what you like best and gradually specialize and become really good at it, and then it becomes really hard to do anything else.
So is there an advantage, I guess, to one or the other? Or would you recommend, do people, I guess, coming out of uni or like early off in career, people tend to be more of a generalist and try and work for people like you, or what if people are like one track minded and like, oh, I'm 16, but I know I want to work with Pixar? Like, what would you do in that case?
It depends how passionate you are. If you desperately just want to be an animator and make things move, that's what you're going to be. Like, and that's what you want to hone your skills at. You should apply for the bigger studios because they are just looking. You know, on their website with all their jobs, there'll be animator, hair, modeler, texture, and you will apply for the animator role. Whereas at Ritzy, we'll put out, I guess, more generalist adverts. And I don't think one's better or worse than the other. Personally, I'd advise to like have a broad understanding of each area so you can increase your chances of getting a job. Because if you are only good at one thing, then you're limiting your chances. But I don't know, would you agree? I'd say generalist is like better, more hireable artist.
More hireable starting point.
Yeah,
maybe. I think generalist with a leaning towards something would be the best advice.
A generalist with a specialist skill would be the best person.
I remember it when I was in my final year of uni. I thought I wanted to be an animator, and then I was doing my major project, like the sort of
You'd be a terrible animator.
I hated it. I was rubbish at animation, and so like, you know, I only learned that I was much better at lighting and comping through learning that I hated animation. So it's just like, you know, like
it's weird though, but then that's what I was saying at the beginning about that's why we were good together early doors, because I would do the first half, have a broad understand the first half, and then there's like a cut-off point with me where I don't really know the rest of it and I'm not really that interested, and Charlie was really good at that bit. So between us we could do a whole project on our own, even if we were a bit crap at some of the stages.
Just get someone else to help out where needed, you know.
Yeah.
It's been the same one since we started, really.
And that's still the same to this day. Like, I prefer the making it move bit, designing it, storytelling, storyboarding, all the more pre-production stuff. And then I like getting involved in the production of the modelling and seeing things turn into 3D and come alive. But then after we've made it move, I kind of dust my hands of it and I say, like, can you now add the lights and make it look pretty? And yeah.
You guys had industry experience before starting your own business. I guess because you said there's a lot of work out there, is a lot of that work more, I guess, is more of the work like working for a big production studio, and more work is like, it's easy right now, not easy, but the opportunities are there to be a freelancer, or the opportunities there as well to for those freelancers to go and maybe start their own studio as well. I guess, do you have any insights on that? Because you guys have obviously started your own business. So
I think there's such a demand for content, whatever it is. I mean, there's other, like, the film and the high end sort of Netflix style shows are like one end, and then the other end is like almost like nursery sort of animations where you got like blobs just moving around and like sort of bedtime story type thing, which is like much cheaper, lower quality animation.
That's a bit harsh.
Well, it is though, isn't it? Because like there's such a demand for content on YouTube. Parents want like something to slap on for their like youngster. Like
and babies don't care how detailed it is.
Exactly, they don't. So then there's this demand for like just
get it done,
stuff
just
out.
get it done.
And and so animation is relatively cheap for that. And so, you know, they're the sort of like, they can look quite weird, I think, but yeah, there's all sorts of different standards that you can do in animation. Obviously, we try to sort of pitch ourselves at the sort of the higher end of it, but you know, there's plenty of content there.
I don't know, what was the question again?
Basically, just if you had any like insights or advice to, I guess, whether people, any advantages to staying freelance versus like working for one of these bigger studios versus the third option of also starting your own animation studio.
Well, I guess job security, if you manage to land a position in a studio that you like and you're happy and you're doing what you enjoy, then that's great. With the freelancers, I think you've got to be prepared for some quiet patches and to make the money while you can, and you'll probably have some really good jobs and some really terrible ones. But at least you're getting your name out there and you're working for different studios and meeting different directors and different teams, and they'll get you back if you do a good job. So you become a bit of a name in the industry, if you know what I mean. But some people like studio hopping. Like, we meet them all the time, and they're just like, I've just worked it here, and I was here like 3 months ago, and then I went and did a gig over there, and they don't like settling, they don't like staying. And then there's others that like just want to stay put because they love it. So
love the security, love the sort of friendships that you build in a studio, and it's just different, but it's different personalities to suit different.
But yeah, if you want to start up your own studio, I think just be prepared for like years to be knocked off your life. I think that's my advice.
The hair to thin,
and yeah, go for it if you want. Yeah, go for it. But it's just really hard. Yeah.
Yeah. Any quick tips or advice there on starting your own thing?
I think do it with someone.
Do it with a mate, yeah.
And be problem half, isn't it?
Yeah, and be prepared. I guess to learn a lot about business. I don't think either of us thought we would know as much as we do now about business. You know, we thought we'd just be having fun and making animation forever, but there is a whole different side to it. Like, it's rare now that we actually do anything creative and get involved with the tools, even though we desperately want to. Just don't get the chance anymore. You know, it's hiring really good animators rather than me animating it, which is how it started. We were doing all the projects ourselves, but just can't do that anymore. So yeah, I think be prepared to kind of sell your soul a little bit.
Do you still
a little, if you want to.
You sure you're in this, mate?
I love it.
You sound really confident.
I love it, but do you know what I mean? We don't get to do the fun stuff anymore.
Yeah, we basically sort of, we didn't really know what tax was before we started.
Did you not?
Well, oh, come on, mate. Like, I missed the finance out of either of us, but there's just so much to running a company, and I think you have to. I think the one thing that we were told that is so true is just like, when you run a company, like, you can never really fully switch off from it, and so there's always something to think about or worry about slightly, but the highs are so high though, and I've loved sort of running this because when you get your first job, it was like a really small project, and we were like yeeping in my car when we found out that we'd won a job, and then, you know, it's just really exciting, like, on the whole. So I would recommend it, but it does come with like a sort of
baggage,
bit of baggage. Yeah.
Do you still get that, like you said, you don't get a lot of hands-on with the creative process, I guess, anymore, but you still get that creative like satisfaction by giving that work to others.
Definitely, yeah.
Like knowing that, I guess, you guys were the masterminds behind the whole project and seeing the finished one.
Definitely. I find it really enjoyable looking for artists and meeting new artists and seeing them do the work and briefing them to do the work, and then they show me what they've done, and it's like, yes, that looks amazing. You know, it's exactly what we discussed and we spoke about. Feeding back is like 50% of our job now. I do miss it, but then every now and then I will grab the mouse and have a little go myself, or say like, send me the file, let me open it. And I think sometimes the staff are shocked because they don't think we used to do it, you know, and it's like, oh, I didn't know you could animate, or I didn't know you could do that. And like, yeah, used to, like, we're not as good anymore, we're a bit rusty.
Now we let you do it.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think it's important, because if you couldn't do it, then who are you to tell them that jump's wrong, that looks wrong, that leg's in the wrong place? Like, why is my opinion important? I think you need to have been able to show someone that you've done it yourself and you've got the experience and you know what you're talking about. Otherwise they'll question you and be like, your animation's shit, so I'm not going to listen to you. Sorry, you're not allowed to swear on it.
No, you're definitely allowed to swear. It's okay.
Oh, okay.
Oh, good.
Okay, cool. But yeah, I really enjoy that. As much as I miss doing it myself, I just love seeing the team make projects, and you get a buzz out of the final film and knowing that you were a part of it, you know, even if you weren't physically animating it yourself and doing every task.
Gradually now the staff are better than we were anyway, you know, like now we're employing people that, because they are more specialised in some respects, like they've just got more hours and more time to be really, really good at something.
And they know new tools, new software, quicker ways of doing it. So sometimes that can be a bit embarrassing. It's like, why can't I just use this? And it's like, I didn't know didn't know that button existed. Fair enough, do that.
Does in the same way it does for us, but does the technology and the software on animation change really quickly?
Yeah, that's something that we're really thinking about. To sort of stay relevant in the industry, you have to sort of keep in touch with like newer technologies, like now, like games are sort of made with like Unreal Engine and things like that, which is like a real-time software. But gradually over time, like animations are moving to that, because if you can see things in real time rather than have to wait overnight to get your frames come back and things like that, which is a really time-intensive thing. Like that gives you more iteration and more time for improvement. And so we're starting to sort of invest in like these newer technologies, because we have to, otherwise we'll just be, over time we'll just get phased out, because
I hope not.
there is still like,
no, I know what you mean.
To be like a really good eye for art and good taste, but if there is still that technological side that you need to be really relevant, but it's costly, to learn new tools and get them and train staff up, and it's one of the headaches that we've got.
I think if you can show a client something earlier, something final earlier, rather than waiting 6 months, then there's a lot to be said for that, because I think that's the key these days, is like people are willing to like pay this money for you to do the job, but they have to wait so long before they can see like the final project. And so some of the new software that's coming out, like Charlie mentioned, they are making it quicker now to like quickly mock something up and see it
and get them a preview
earlier. Yeah. And like if we don't start hiring artists who have experience with that software and stuff, like other studios will take over and be able to deliver quicker and stuff. And that is a real danger, really, because we're still doing every stage the way it should be done, but
it's just evolving now. And VR might be a sort of different sort of avenue that you go down, where clients put on a VR headset and you can sort of see an edit in that respect. Like it's changing so quickly, and who knows how content will be consumed in a few years.
Cool. I think the only other thing I would really like you guys to cover is I guess this is quite a general question, but I guess who or what is animation for? What are like the different uses for it? I guess why would someone choose an animation project and take on that longer time frame versus the more traditional, just like regular live action production?
That's a hard question. I think ultimately it's like you can do things in animation that you can't do in live action. You can bring to life, this microphone can bounce around the studio and have a life of its own. Everything could float up in the air. You could have tons of visual effects. Like, it really depends what you want. You know what I mean? And I think animation,
it's about control, I think, as well. Like, you can control animation however you want. If you want like that reaction of the actor to be that little bit more subtle, you can communicate that, and the animator will do it. So, but again, that's for like the sort of serious sort of film side of things. But you do get ultimate control in animation. You control every single nuance. So there is that. But then, like Dan says, you can make anything you want move in any way you want, really.
When you see these films where they like they're super, 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 super realistic, high end and detailed, but you're like, well, why didn't you just film? Why didn't you just do a live action? Like those are the sort of animated projects I'm like, I don't understand why you've chosen animation for that, because you're just trying to make a skin look as real as you possibly can. You're trying to make a human look as real as you possibly can. Whereas if you're trying to do something completely wacky and crazy and imaginative and Disney-like, then of course you're going to choose animation, because otherwise you can have loads of people dressed up in stupid outfits and running around the studio. So it totally depends on what project, what you want as the outcome as a client, I think.
Yeah.
But that is a really hard question. Why animation?
Ultimately,
I didn't expect an easy answer.
No, it's really hard. I'm now questioning my whole life.
What do you guys think of the new trend? It's suppose it's a trend of the live action remakes of all these old animated films, because most of these live action films also are mostly animated.
Yeah.
And that really throws people off.
Yeah, it's like The Lion King, isn't it?
Yeah. It's live action, but it's almost completely animated.
But that's a great example of like something that's taken years and years and years, and hundreds of people to create a realistic lion. And it's just like, why didn't you just go and film some lions? I don't know, like
it's not even that. It's just like it doesn't have the charm.
Well, it doesn't have any personality. It's nothing like the original Lion King. Someone actually did like their version of it, didn't they? Where I think it was a freelance where he like did some 3D lions, but like in a cartoony kind of way. They looked like so much better than the thing that actually got released.
So it's like they spent so much time on making it so realistic as an animation, they forgot to put the emotion back into it.
And
they didn't do it because it looked so realistic. Like it wouldn't have worked having Scar, like his mouth move around the way that Disney did it. It would just look uncanny. So it's a technical achievement, but other than that, like I don't think anyone would be in a hurry to watch that ahead of the original Disney.
But we do know a lot of people that worked on that, so I think it was a great
shout
film.
out to those guys.
It was a great film.
From an animation standpoint, though, it's
incredible.
It looks amazing,
incredible.
Yeah.
But you just feel like watching like a wildlife documentary, don't you?
I guess that was the point, right?
I don't understand the point. Yeah, like personally, like I've always.
But they're doing it with everything now, aren't they? Like Jungle Book.
Yeah, the Little Mermaid teaser came out the other day.
Yeah,
controversial.
I haven't seen it. Did it look any good?
Really good?
Does it? I've not seen that. I think you'd have to do her like the Mermaid's Tale. I mean, you can't really do that with live action, but everything else maybe.
Yeah,
it's tricky. I think animation in that respect should be used to sort of complement live action. You know, and I think there's a real use for it there. But
interesting. Well, if you guys have anything to say to like the freelancer community, I know you guys work with a lot of freelancers. If there's anybody who wants to get in touch with you guys, I know you guys, I'm assuming, are always kind of looking for new talent. Anybody that matches up with what you guys are doing, how can people get in touch with you? How would you recommend people, go about that?
I think on our website, www.ritzyaniation.com, we have the jobs section where we post jobs. So when we're ramping up, we need people. They should check that out. But we can be a bit lazy with it, so I'd always apply regardless if you're looking for a job. Is it info@Ritzy Animation or jobs at Ritzy Animation?
Check the socials as well. Like I think it's just good for people to sort of be aware of like what we do, and like you can see our showreel on our website, see the sort of work that we do, and I guess if they think that like they're a good fit for us, then we'd welcome any emails, because we have like a big old database where we keep everyone.
We're trying to be really on it with like any application that comes through. We save it, we look at it at some point when we've got a quiet period, and then we'll add it to our database, and all those skills we talked about earlier, we'll highlight what skills they've got, and then we can filter it. So when the time does come around when we need someone who can do really good fur, we look for fur and we find the right person. And that goes for all the different roles. So you'll be stored and you'll be used if you're good.
Cool. Good to hear. I'm sure people will be excited about that. I think that brings us towards the end of the episode here.
Yeah, thank you so much.
It's been an hour already.
That's mad.
Time flies. But yeah, thank you both for trekking all the way over here and coming on the podcast. I think it's a really interesting episode.
Thanks so much for having us. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, I think it's just really cool to have that insight from a different part of the industry. We don't always deal with animation, we're definitely don't specialize in it here. We'd like to do a bit more, I think. But it's always, it's stuff clients ask for, and it's stuff that's, either we do it or we have to outsource it. So, it's good to be a part of that freelance network as well. And, we work with freelancers all the time. And that's, a big goal of this podcast as well, is just to, I guess, be a voice for other freelance artists, and to get on the radar of them. If you guys are interested, if anyone has the skill sets, reach out to anyone who comes on here. And if we have a place, and if we have a need, we're more than happy to connect.
Oh, brilliant!
Thanks so much.
Yeah, so thank you guys again for coming on. That wraps up this episode. This will come out on the third Wednesday of every month. That's just as a reminder. And we will see you on the next episode.